yeah, I want to just go ahead and go over my birth story number 2, short version. So here's the short version. I was 40 weeks and 3 days when I went into labor with my son, who is my second child. My daughter is older, so she's almost exactly 4 years apart from him. So I was really, really ready to have this baby. He had been sitting at a +2 station, which is 1 station away from crowning. Like, the nurses were absolutely shocked that he was sitting so low in me. And they had mentioned that the labor might go fast. 2 station, which is 1 station away from crowning. Like, the nurses were absolutely shocked that he was sitting so low in me. And they had mentioned that the labor might go fast, but they also told me to follow the 5-1-1 rule, which is contractions that are 5 minutes apart for 1 minute long for 1 hour. And I never got to that point, and I'll explain in a second. So I never hit that. I had been having prodromal labor. That's when labor happens like around the same time every day, for weeks before you go into labor. So it was like beginning stages of labor. It's exactly what I felt with my daughter in the beginning stages of the labor. But instead of getting like more intense and more frequent, they just would fizzle out and I would go to bed. So it was from about 3 to 9:30, not every night, but like maybe 2 or 3 times a week since I was like 38 weeks pregnant. And they were super mild contractions, like nothing to worry about, but it really threw me off because I just never knew when I was going into labor. So finally, on the day I went into labor, that happened again, and it was like 9:30 and my contractions fizzled out again. They had been stronger. I had done things to induce labor, which I will do a separate video on. So I kind of thought that I was for sure going into labor, but then when they fizzled out, I was like really bummed and kind of just like over it. I was just like, I'm done. Like, this is stupid. Why am I not going into labor? Why am I having all this false labor? So I went to bed. I was like, so at 11:40 p.m., I woke up needing to go pee. So I'd only been asleep for like an hour and I had to go pee, woke up having to go pee, which was totally normal for me. And so I got up and I went pee, and I noticed that I had some cramping, really mild cramping. And I was like, that's a little bit different. And I had like many weird symptoms the week before, but I had never had cramping, so that was new. So I laid back down in bed to try to sleep through them to see if I could, because if you can, then that's not real labor, right? So I laid down in bed and tried to sleep through them, and I couldn't. So I thought, maybe this is something, I don't know. And then I started to notice that my contractions were coming and going like a wave, and I was like, cool, they're like, yeah, they're coming and going, like this is it, I think. So I got up and I started doing what I had been practicing. I'm going to do another video on how I prepped for labor, for a natural unmedicated labor and delivery. But I started doing what I had been practicing, and as I was doing that, they were starting to feel a little worse, a little bit stronger. And so I started to time them, and I did that for about 20 minutes before I went and woke up my husband, because it took about 20 minutes of that for me to be like, okay, this is it, this is it, this is it. And I was like so excited to go tell him, like, babe, I'm in labor, for real. So he woke up and he came in and just kind of like hung out in the room with me. I was doing my thing, just kind of swaying, leaning over and swaying, and all the stuff that I had prepped doing. And I texted my doula saying, hey, I'm having contractions and they're pretty painful. Like, I mean, it wasn't horrible, but like, so she said, oh, okay, well, go ahead and hop in the shower and let some hot water hit your back, and that'll help with the back pain, and I'll come over. I'll be on the way. And I said, okay, cool. So at 12:30, I got into the shower and just let the water hit my back, and let me tell you, that was so amazing. It was such a pain reliever. It was so peaceful, so nice. The only thing is it got really hot and stuffy in there, so my husband opened all the windows, and then that was perfect. So I was in the shower doing my thing, and I totally had breaks in between my contractions. I wasn't feeling pain. I was able to talk to my husband, but they were coming pretty fast. I felt like my length of being able to talk to him in between, I felt like was getting shorter and shorter, and he was timing them. So I finally said, babe, how close are they? And he was like, very casually, he was like, oh, they're 2 minutes apart. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have to call the hospital, and we have to go to the hospital. Like, you're supposed to go when they're 5 minutes apart for 1 hour. But when they go to 2 minutes apart, that can trump the 1 hour thing, right? And so he was kind of surprised, taken off guard, and was like, oh, okay. And I was like, he's like, so he went and got the information to call the hospital. So he calls. Okay, so I'm in the shower, and my contractions get to a point where they hurt bad enough that I feel like I want to cry, which that's kind of my signal of like really bad. So I got to that point, and it felt just like with my first labor, and I thought, oh shit, like, I remember how bad this is, and I'm probably like 5 centimeters maybe. And the only reason why I thought that is because I already knew that I had been 2 centimeters at my last doctor's appointment. So I was like, well, I'm probably like 5 centimeters, but oh man, I don't know if I can do this. So I even told my husband, like, it really hurts. Like, I think I might have to get an epidural again. Like, I'm remembering how bad this is. Even though it wasn't back labor this time, so like it wasn't as bad as the first time, but still it was like, oh yeah, this really hurts. Like, I remember now. I might have to get an epidural after all. And he was like, that's fine. You gotta do whatever you gotta do. And at one point I even was like, I don't know how people do this. And he was like, you're doing it right now, and you're doing great. And I was like, I'm doing it. I am. So that was nice. But okay, so I think it was like the contraction after I said that. He was on the phone with the hospital. So he's on the phone with the hospital, and my water breaks, and it's just like a pop, like I feel it pop in me. I hear it, and I feel the water come out. And I'm like, oh, my water just broke. And my husband, I can hear him on the phone. He's on the other side of the curtain because I'm in the shower. And I can hear him go, oh, her water just broke. And then I'm like, the next contraction, my body went, whoo, and I was like, I'm pushing. And he was like, what? Oh, no. And I was just like, I'm not doing it on purpose. My body's pushing. Like, I could feel my uterus and my body just were going, and I could feel the baby coming. And I literally had no control over it. Like, I have no idea how people stop pushing. Like, I had no control over this whatsoever. Like, I could not have stopped this baby from coming out. So yeah, the contraction after my water broke made me pee, like forced me to pee. It was really a really weird feeling. And I'm standing up in the shower like this with my hands on the walls, and like it forced me to pee, and I'm just like, oh my god, like what's happening? Like, my body's just taking over, and I'm just like here to witness it. So yeah, then after that I had such a big contraction. Not necessarily painful, like, yeah, it was painful, but like that's less of, it's not a good description. It's like it wasn't pain. It wasn't just like pain just taking over. It was just muscles working. It was like hard working muscles. At this point, it was different. But I went onto my hands and my knees because I could tell like that it was just happening. And so I went on my hands and my knees and I was like, you have to help. And he was like, should I call 911? And I was like, no, just help, you know, I just needed help right then and there. And I felt like the baby was like coming out right that moment, and he basically was. But I did poop this time, like for real. But it was really small, minuscule amount, and that's gross, but it's the truth. And I want to be honest because we need to be honest in our birth stories so that moms know what to expect, and that's a super common thing. So I was totally expecting to my first pregnancy, and I didn't. There was still poop everywhere, and that was from my baby, but this time I did poop. And I knew it, and I was like, oh, I pooped, like all, not like super upset, but like bummed, right? Pun intended. But anyways, so then the next contraction, I was like, he's coming. So there was 4 contractions. So the last 2, I was like, he's coming for real. And then the doorbell rang, and it was my doula, and my husband was like, oh, I'm just gonna go get the door. And I was like, no, you can't, he's coming. And the next contraction, my husband's like, yeah, like, or the second contraction, his head came out. I said that, and his head came out, and then my husband was there, and the 4th contraction, his body came out, and I was thinking in my head before there were like 2 things I was thinking. The very first thing before those 2 last contractions, the first thing I was thinking was like, I'm so glad I don't have to get in the car. And then the second thing I was thinking was, oh shit, here comes the ring of fire that everyone talks about. And guess what? I did not feel one ring of fire pain. I felt nothing. Like, it only felt good to push him out. Like, really. Like, not like how some people say it's pleasurable, like the orgasmic births, but like, just, it felt good, like how it, and I'm not saying it felt like having a poop, because it didn't feel the same as having a poop, but like, when people say it feels like you're pushing out a poop, they don't mean that it literally feels like you're pooping. They mean it's the same sensation as when you're pooping, and when you poop and like you can feel it release, that's what you feel, but like in your vagina. So it felt good in that sense, as like when you poop, it feels good to like release that. So yeah, it didn't hurt at all, and I was like, I was totally shocked. I was so nervous at that moment that it was going to really hurt, and it didn't at all. So yeah, he came right out, and my husband caught him, and I freaked out a little and told my husband to pull on him when his head was out before the last push. And luckily my husband is smarter than that and like didn't really. But yeah, so he was fine. I immediately was like, is he breathing? Is he okay? And my husband said at first he kind of wasn't, and he just like, you know, kind of like tapped him, and then he like started breathing like totally normal. But I fully understand that we were incredibly lucky that everything went the way it did. This was completely unintended. Like, I totally thought we were gonna be in a hospital. Took everyone by surprise. So as soon as the baby was delivered, my husband ran and got the doula. She came in. She's in midwifery school, so she kind of knew what to do. So she helped us take care of the baby, like put blankets on him and me, and get us out of the tub. And she helped me birth the placenta, which again was like super easy, not painful at all. I had very minimal blood loss, just like with my daughter. So all of that was really good. And then we just, we didn't know what to do with the cord. So we put the placenta on ice because I was getting it made into placenta pills. So we put it on ice in a little ice chest, and it was still connected to the baby, and we bundled him up and put him in his car seat, and we drove to the hospital. And when we got to the hospital, they were like super excited to hear our story and meet us and help us out. And it was kind of weird. They like didn't know what to do. They were like, how do we process someone who's already had a baby? And I don't know, that stuff was kind of annoying. And then the midwife had to check me, and I had a small tear. She said I needed like 2 stitches, but she only ended up doing 1 stitch because I could feel it. Like, even though she gave me shots to numb the area, and that hurt to get the shots, but then I could still feel her like sewing me. I don't think I felt it to the full extent, but like I could feel it, and it hurt, and it was uncomfortable, and probably the worst part of that entire labor and delivery. So yeah, we just stayed in the hospital overnight, and my son did end up having 2 hematomas on his head, which I can do or go further into on a different video. But basically they said that can happen from really long labors, and since he was sitting so low for so long, he was at a +2 station for like 2 to 3 weeks. I think 2 weeks. But anyways, it was long enough that like basically that's how he got them. But he was fine. He is fine, and we're very grateful and thankful for that experience, and that everything went well and there were no complications. Again, I didn't have any pain when they checked my stomach or anything. My contractions were pretty painful, but I literally took 1 ibuprofen, and I was trying not to. Like, I had natural remedies to help with the pain, but they weren't really working. So I took 1 ibuprofen, and that was fine. That's like literally all I took. I started my active labor like when I woke up. It was 11:40 p.m. and my son was born at 1:28 a.m. So less than 2 hours. That's how fast it went. Like, that's why it's hard to explain to people why we didn't make it to the hospital, or like why we didn't go to the hospital, but it's like it went so fast. Like, when you're in labor, it seems like 20 hours of labor like I had with my daughter. It seems like that would seem really, really long, but it doesn't. Even though you do feel like you're in pain for a long time, like the time goes by really, really fast. So less than 2 hours seemed like nothing to me. Like, oh, that's what happened. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you will. I want to share like more of my experiences and stuff. So I'm trying to be better at being fast and concise. But yeah. So please join this family. I want to create a really nice little group of people here and support here. So yeah, let me know if you had any experience with prodromal labor or precipitous labor, which is really fast labor. And yeah, I'd love to hear if you had any similarities or differences or whatever. I love birth stories. That's what I look up a lot. So thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. Have a nice evening. Good night.